Above the fractured blue marble of Earth, the starship Hecatrius hung like a patient god, cloaked in light-warping armor and layered with centuries of unblinking silence. Inside, the observation chamber buzzed with data. Heat signatures, force diagrams, vocal frequencies, all trained on a particular hill range in Thessaly. To the Grail High scholars, Earth was not a backwater. It was a crucible. "They've converged," said Scholar Vayan, her translucent skin flickering with violet tension. "Roman maniples, Macedonian phalanx, the old world devouring the older." "No obvious technological divergence," Scholar Merrick's replied, adjusting a crystalline lens that expanded the terrain in real time. "But tactical evolution is unpredictable. That species excels at it." "Watch this one," Vayan murmured, gesturing toward a tall, broad-shouldered figure in segmented armor, the red crest of his galea catching morning mist like a banner of fire. On the ground, Centurion Decimus Varro adjusted his stance, his sandaled feet digging into damp soil. He didn't know he was being watched. He only knew this morning reeked of blood and wet wheat. Across the rolling hills of Cynoscephalae, the Macedonian banners shimmered through low fog. 100 horn calls echoed across valleys. Today, he would kill Hellenes, perhaps die among them. Behind him, his men murmured nervously. Decimus turned. "You know your ranks. You know your shields. You know your gods. The only thing new today is who's stupid enough to stand across from us." That earned a grin from a few. It wasn't fear he saw in their eyes, but calculation. Soldiers trained to improvise, the Roman way. Miles away, in the thinner ranks of the Macedonian left flank, Nikos of Larissa stood with a spear across his shoulders, studying the ridgeline. His body still bore scars from Pydna and a lifetime of border skirmishes. He was not young, nor easily stirred, but this morning unsettled him. The hills were too narrow, the fog too thick. The phalanx, majestic in flat terrain, was unwieldy on slopes. Still, orders had come from Philip himself. Hold the line. Let the phalanx crush the Roman ants. Beside him, young Alexandros shifted nervously. "They don't fight with order," the boy whispered. "No music, no rhythm, just gaps and trickery. They fight with ideas," Nikos said quietly. "It's why we will lose. Then why are we here?" "Because we're Greek," he replied, "and Greeks do not run until it's too late." From orbit, the alien observers noted his words. Emotions as calculus, loyalty in conflict with reason. Intriguing. Down below, Decimus raised a hand. The fog rippled with motion. Roman scouts had reported the phalanx's approach. Their right was extended too far. A weakness. "Pull second and third into echelon," he ordered his tribune. "We'll bait their advance, then fold the flank." His orders moved like fire through the ranks. Shields braced, pylons lifted. The Romans did not chant. They waited. And then, from the fog, the Hellenic roar. Sarissas dropped in unison. Shields slammed into formation. The Macedonian wall began to move, glorious and terrible. Nikos marched within it, counting steps, feeling the ground tilt beneath his sandals. Every part of him screamed that this was suicide. Yet still, he marched. On the opposite rise, Decimus waited, then signaled. Arrows loosed, javelins hurled, the front edge of the phalanx staggered. Roman maniples shifted like a puzzle box, creating deadly pockets of open space that funneled the advancing Greeks into disadvantage. "What are they doing?" Alexandros shouted. "They're thinking," Nikos growled. As the formations collided, the world turned into noise. Metal on metal, shouted Latin and Greek, trampled limbs, bone. Decimus fought at the front, his gladius punching beneath sarissas, sliding past shields with brutal precision. But he wasn't fighting Greeks. He was dismantling a legacy. The myth of the unbreakable phalanx. It had no room to turn, no room to breathe, and men needed breath to kill. In the chaos, Nikos saw him. That Roman officer with the scar beneath one eye, calm amid the killing. A leader, not just a commander. He broke formation, surging sideways through confused troops. Reaching Decimus, he swung his xiphos in a high arc, forcing the Roman back. Their swords clashed once, twice, but just then a riderless horse plowed between them and the moment shattered. Both men were drawn back into the press, Decimus to reinforce the center, Nikos to shield a retreating file. From above, the aliens leaned forward as if that brief duel carried symbolic weight. Two minds, said Vayan. Two philosophies, intersecting. Which one survives? Asked Marax. That, she said, is why we watch. And as the fog began to lift from Cynoscephalae, the ground was already slick with the price of pride. Neither side had yet won, but it was clear. This was not a battle of numbers. It was a battle of ideas, and only one would walk away, unbroken. Smoke drifted low over the bloodied slopes, curling around the broken spears and tangled corpses like a mourning shroud. The fog was gone, burned off by midday sun and the furnace heat of battle. What remained was clear and terrible. The Macedonian left had crumbled. Decimus crouched behind a shattered shield, his ears ringing, his sword arm trembling not from fear but from fatigue. The Romans had split the phalanx, punctured it at its seams. What they couldn't pierce, they encircled. Classic Roman doctrine, but this time elevated, precise and cruel, like slicing meat from bone. "Reform on the ridgeline!" he shouted, though his voice scraped like gravel. "Take their rear before they realize they've lost their front!" His tribunes scrambled, horns signaled. Across the hillside, maniples curved like a steel net, tightening around what was left of the Macedonian formation. On the other side, Nikos crawled from beneath a pile of the dead. Blood soaked his cloak, some of it his, much not. Alexandros was gone, trampled. He'd seen it, saw the boy scream as a legionary's pilum skewered his lung, saw the panic in his eyes as the formation folded over him like a wave. Now, Nikos stumbled through a battlefield he no longer recognized. The phalanx had not just failed, it had been obsolete, a weapon forged for a war centuries old, now laid bare by Roman adaptability. They hadn't just outfought the Greeks, they had outthought them. He dropped his spear. It was too long to be useful in this chaos, and retrieved a Roman gladius from a dead hand. Short, efficient, meant to kill fast, not parade. He grunted. Perhaps we should have copied more than their roads. Above, aboard the Hecatrius, Scholar Vayan narrowed her eyes as she tracked the two men again, Decimus and Nikos, survivors through sheer force of decision. Each represented a strand of Terran evolution, stability versus innovation, honor versus results. Both admirable, both flawed. "These two," Marek said, noting the combat telemetry, converging again. Back on Earth, Decimus had reached the top of the ridge. He could see the field stretch below him, scattered lines of fleeing Greeks, clusters of Romans reforming, collecting prisoners, offering surrender. But he saw something else, too. A figure, trudging uphill alone, sword in hand, eyes unwavering. Decimus raised his own blade, too tired to laugh. Again, Nikos stopped a dozen paces away. "Just you and me this time. No empire to lean on, no illusions either." They charged, not with war cries, but grim, silent resolve. Their blades clashed, locked, broke apart. Dust flew. A cut opened beneath Decimus's eye. Nikos's wrist split where metal bit flesh. The two men danced a savage rhythm, neither graceful nor choreographed, but personal. Not Rome versus Greece, man versus man. Nikos feinted left, spun low, drove forward. Decimus parried, but too late. The xiphos scraped across his ribs. He staggered, dropped to one knee. Nikos raised his blade, but paused. "Kill me," Decimus said, spitting blood, "or you'll lose the moment." Nikos lowered the weapon, chest heaving. Number Y already lost. Then he flipped the blade in his hand and held it out, hilt first. Decimus stared. "They won't accept a surrender," he muttered. "I know." Decimus took the sword anyway, stood slowly. For a long moment they stood side by side, surveying the battlefield, not as conqueror and conquered, but as survivors of a war neither had started. Vayan's voice echoed in the alien chamber. "A micropact. This changes the model. It's not about Rome or Greece," Marek said. "It's about convergence, adaptation through empathy. Humanity continues to surprise." On Earth, Decimus motioned to a passing tribune. "Spare him," he said of Nikos. "Not out of mercy, out of usefulness." The tribune frowned. "A Greek? A soldier," Decimus snapped. "And one we'll need." The man obeyed. As Nikos limped toward the Roman lines, escorted but unchained, he glanced once over his shoulder at the hills that had broken an empire and at the man who had changed the way he defined enemy. The war wasn't over, but the world was different now, and far above the Hecatrius recorded everything, down to the heartbeat. The field had quieted by dusk, its violence now reduced to smoldering carts and the murmur of the wounded. Decimus stood at the edge of the Roman encampment, watching engineers disassemble what remained of Macedon's siege equipment. Fires dotted the plain like distant stars. He didn't speak as Nikos approached. No guards, no chains, just a thick linen wrap over his bruised arm and a tired expression that mirrored his own. "They'll never accept me," Nikos said plainly. Decimus didn't turn. "They won't have to." A silence passed between them, the kind that comes not from awkwardness, but from the exhaustion of men who have said all that needs to be said through steel. Far above, on the observation deck of the Hecatrius, Scholar Vayan replayed the feed from their neural drones. Her translucent fingers hovered over the interface as she analyzed the final shifts, micro-behaviors, troop cohesion metrics, nonverbal cues. Marek's watched too, arms crossed, mandibles flexing in a silent gesture of anticipation. "You think the Terrans learned?" he asked. "No," she replied. "They remembered. That's more dangerous." On Earth, Rome's standards fluttered beside the surrendered symbols of Macedon. The Battle of Cynoscephalae had ended in less than a day, but its impact had already begun to ripple outward. Roman commanders now spoke of dismantling not only enemy armies, but enemy ideologies. Traditions had weight, but only if carried forward. Stagnation had cost Philip everything. In the makeshift war council, Decimus laid a map over the campaign table. He did not lecture. He invited. Nikos hesitated at the edge of the room before stepping forward. No one saluted him. No one had to. He pointed at the Pindus range. "This will be your bottleneck," he said. "Not from enemy troops, those will scatter, but from villages, refugees, guerrillas who remember the phalanx not as a tactic, but as a symbol." A junior tribune scoffed. "We have cavalry." "Cavalry don't hold mountains," Nikos said, unfazed. "Men do, and these men have nothing left but hate." Decimus nodded. "Then we win them without fighting." Murmurs rose, surprised, but no one contradicted him. Not after Cynoscephalae. That night, Nikos wandered the edges of camp, a guest in the empire he'd once opposed. He watched a Roman medic sew up a Hellenic boy with gentle hands. He watched a pair of soldiers, one Greek, one Latin, share black bread over a shield. Beneath conquest, something strange had begun to grow. Synthesis. In orbit, Vayan's report streamed into the consortium's central archive. "Roman adaptability," she wrote, "combined with selective assimilation of conquered intellects, presents a unique cultural survival pattern. Terrans are not merely victors. They are absorbers." Marex added, "This phenomenon, conflict followed by cooperation, has replicated across millennia. Suggest further observation. particularly during cross-cultural transitions catalyzed by trauma. Elsewhere on the ship, a new directive took form. On Earth, Decimus stood alone at dawn, watching the sun crest over the blood-washed hills. His armor was polished, but the scratches beneath still showed, etched by time and blade and decision. Nikos approached, less a shadow now and more a mirror. "You'll go east?" Nikos asked. "Eventually, but the next conquest isn't a place. It's how we rule it." Nikos studied him. "You're not like the others." "I am exactly like the others," Decimus replied. "But they will follow what works." A pause, then quietly, "And what if this fails?" Decimus looked out across the valley. "Then another battle. Another lesson. We keep adapting, or we vanish." Nikos nodded once, then turned to walk beside him. In the skies above, the Hecatrius initiated departure protocols. Its purpose here was complete, not because the war had ended, but because the humans had once again proven what made them singular. They learned, not quickly, not cleanly, but always. And they never stopped. Back on Earth, two former enemies walked together down a path that would not be recorded in Roman annals or Greek tragedies. It wouldn't be remembered in songs or etched in monuments. But it would shape empires, a soldier and a strategist, adaptation and legacy, both human, both Terran. And far above them, the stars waited, watching, listening, preparing. Because this wasn't the end of history. It was just its next chapter.